Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Here.
Thank you. Item 4. Do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
Move we adopt the agenda?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam. Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Harris.
Yes.
Justin Lane.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Shelley Sourceable.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5, period open to the public. Anybody in the audience would like to address the board on any item that is not on the agenda, please feel free to do so now. Seeing none, we'll move on. Item 7, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move we accept the agenda. Second.
Okay. Director Paris and Director Lynn. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam. Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Harris.
Yes.
Justin Lane.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes,
Shelley Sourceable.
Yes.
it's approved, thank you. Item 8, Finance Committee. Director Donato, do you have a report?
Yes, I do. Yesterday, the Finance Committee met and went over Bill's payable and there were a couple items here. One of the items is the consideration of possible action on awarding construction contracts for rehabilitation of various turnouts. And it looks like that Justin, who's Justin?
Yeah, Engineering Manager Justin Livesay is going to present on this item.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Donato. Good evening, board members. Nice to see you all. Included in your packet is a staff report regarding this item, which is approved capital project CP 20-03 for the rehabilitation of 6 agency turnouts installed between 1977 and 1981. Staff prepared a bid package for this item and sent it directly to 5 local qualified contractors, as well as advertised it on the agency website for a period of 3 weeks. We received 2 bids for this project. One was from Nicholas Construction in the amount of $642,000. One was from Bowie Contractors in the amount of $347,788. Bowie Contractors Lancaster, and they previously worked for the agency on a $3.5 million contract to do the site facilities at the Westside Water Bank back in 2012, as well as done some fencing work for the agency at the Eastside Water Bank in 2014. Staff was very happy with the quality of the work and the timeline for completion in both those projects. One other item to note, Bowie recently also completed the recharge basins for the Upper Amargosa Creek Recharge Project under contract with the City of Palmdale. So we believe that Bowie is the lowest responsible bidder, and we're recommending awarding this contract to them. I would like to bring to your attention as well that agency staff will be performing the construction management and general construction services on this project, but some specialized inspections will be necessary for geotechnical and welding work. So staff reached out to 2 local companies, Earth Systems and Aero Engineering, to obtain rate sheets to perform this work on a time and materials basis. And based on the estimated amount of time that their staff will need to spend at each location, staff believes will receive the best value going with Earth Systems based on that time and their rate sheet that they provided to us. We believe that $15,000 is a conservative estimate for that work. We believe that should be can be authorized under the general manager's purchase authority for under $25,000. The average Director Sourceball, did you have a question? No? Okay, so the additive cost of both the construction contracts and the specialized inspection services will be approximately $360,000, which is about $40,000 under the approved budget of $400,000. So with that, we would ask that the board award the contract to Bowie Contractors and authorize, in the not to exceed amount, of $347,788, and authorize the general manager to execute the associated agreement and subsequently issue a notice of award and notice to proceed.
Okay.
Any questions?
Good presentation.
Very good, thank you.
I move on board with order A1, staff recommendation that we award the contract for $347,788 to Bowie Construction.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam, Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Harris.
Yes.
Justin Lane.
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Carried, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 8.2, consideration of possible action to approve purchase order 20-0015 for Eastside Water Treatment Plant valve replacement, R&D automation, $55,000.505.76. And this presentation is by manager.
Good evening. A little background, every year operations staff targets areas of vulnerability with some of our aging infrastructure. And for the last 9 to 10 years, we've tried to be very proactive about replacing a lot of valves and actuators and things to get everything up to where it should be. This year, the capital asset replacement budget included a project which was item ER 8-20, and that was to replace the clarifier influent valves at the Eastside Treatment Plant. These are 18-inch gear-operated butterfly valves. They're located about 12 feet below grade. So it's a little bit of labor involved in doing this. So we've dealt with automation, RV automation for about the last 25 years to do this type of work. We price them occasionally. I usually know about what labor should be on jobs like this just from experience, but the parts are really what we worry about because we want to make sure that we're getting fair pricing on parts. Because a lot of times we can buy parts ourselves and have a contractor install them. So on this item, we wanted RV to do the work because of their technical expertise, the fact that they stock these valves. Most places, if you get valves in 6 to 8 weeks, they have them in stock. And also just the fact that their pricing has been reasonable over the years, we've noticed. So what we did, we had them break down their bid into labor and materials. And we priced the materials, which are the valves, with a large valve supply company, Kern, Maine. We figured they'd give us the best price. And we found that R&B is within 2% of industry standard. Made us feel better. You know, you like to trust companies, but it never hurts to trust but verify, right? So that's what we did. That being said, the pricing came in at $55,505.76. The amount budgeted was $50,000, so we're about $5,500 over. R&B was awarded a previous contract to do some other valve work for AVEK, and they came in at $12,000 under the budgeted amount. So that should make up for the overage on this project. So we're still well within budget. Our overall operations budget for maintenance, we're still tracking almost $100,000 under budget for this fiscal year. So we're doing pretty good there. So we would recommend that the board would approve in the amount of $55,505.76 R&B automation to do this work.
I move on order 8.2, the amount of $55,505.76.
I'll second.
Is that Audrey?
Yes.
Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam, Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Harris.
Yes.
Justin Lane,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable.
Yes.
Thank you.
Carried, thank you.
That concludes the finance report.
Thank you very much, Director. Item 8B, Capital Improvement Program Committee. Again, Director Donato, do you have a report?
Yes, we have an item on the agenda. It's item 8E1, consideration of possible action to approve a professional services agreement with MC Engineering for the design associated with Westside Water Bank recharge pipe. MC Engineering for 103.405.00. And Justin, come on back up here.
Thank you again, Director Donato, and good evening again, members of the board. Let's see, I think I have some slides actually for this one. But included in your packet is the staff report for this item as well, which is other approved capital project CP 20-04, which is to install some underground recharge piping at the Westside Water Bank. So the Westside Water Bank, just kind of for reference, is located out here, Prince Hill. Our treatment plant where we're at right now is there. This is about 140th Street West and Avenue B. You can see we have our 11 recovery wells out there. And this site, unlike the High Desert Water Bank, was not engineered for the underground or for recharge piping or the recharge basins. Because of that, staff has been using above ground temporary aluminum piping in order to recharge out there, which is very labor intensive and expensive. We spent almost $1 million in the last 10 years just replacing that aluminum piping. So what this contract would do, let's see, I think I've got, so we came up with a schematic design here. And what this contract would do would be to do a design of pipeline to recharge in the areas outlined by green there, which are currently being served by a temporary aluminum pipe. And the red line is the proposed buried pipeline that we came up with that would be able to recharge in all those same areas. We reached out to 6 design firms and requested a proposal on this particular layout, and we got proposals from 4 of the firms. So those are summarized here. Kennedy, James, and Black and Beach decided not to propose because they were too busy. Stantec and Corolla both proposed, but their fees were a little bit out of line with what you typically expect for this type of work. I suspect that they were also very busy. And then we have MC Engineering and Provost and Pritchard, which are kind of within the standard, which rule of thumb is kind of 8 to 10% of the design contract or the construction work for a design contract for this type of work. The approved budget for this project is $1.5 million. That includes the design and the construction. So this is just the first phase of that. And we reviewed both MC Engineering and Provost and Pritchard's proposals for professional services. We're not required to go with the lowest bid in this instance. And in this particular case, we're actually not recommending the lowest bid. We're recommending that we go with MC Engineering. Provost and Pritchard proposed a very straightforward design based on the layout that we provided with them. MC Engineering kind of decided that they thought it would be better, and we agree with them to take a more holistic view of the property and see if some regrading makes sense. Maybe we can reduce the construction costs by minimizing the amount of pipelines if we can regrade, or just looking at the whole overall aspect, which was never done from the beginning of the project. So we like that particular approach. They're a smaller engineering team, but their principal engineer comes from a very large engineering firm, HDR. And so we think staff will be able to work very closely with them, learn something along the way. They really want to get staff involved in the design of this, and after 10 years of working out there, we think staff has a lot of good ideas. So they also added an option, which you'll see, so the staff recommendation doesn't quite line up with the design fee. They had an option to do a topographic survey of the entire southern half of the recharge basins, and not just the proposed alignment of our pipeline, and that would help with making decisions on the regrading. So we do think that's worth doing. It's only an additional $5,000, so we would recommend that we award a contract to MC Engineering for this project in the amount of $103,405, which includes the optional additional survey area. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I have a question.
Yes,
Have
ma'am.
we ever dealt with MC Engineering in the past?
No, we've never worked with MC Engineering in the past. They came in and met with Dwayne and Matt a few months ago, I think, and expressed some interest in working with the agency. We think this is a good project for them to start out on. We've contacted several of their references, and everybody had really great things to say about them. They've worked on similar size projects and actually larger projects, and they're doing a $12 million pipeline project up in Northern California right now. So we think they're very well qualified, and we've heard nothing but good things about them.
Okay, great. Thank you, Justin.
Well, the question I have is, with the dollar amount, and it's over 50,000, the bidding process, I mean, you have P&P, or the lower bid comes $10,000 less. And I'm wondering, is that an issue?
Yeah, and for professional services, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not required to go with the low bid on this type of work.
For design services and engineering services, the agency should be going with the most qualified bidder, taking into account all of the circumstances.
Just want to cover our bases there. Okay, then I'll go ahead and move on to E1, and we approve the contract for well, you got 103,000, well, that's because of the other items, 405.00.
I'll second.
All right, Shelley, we've already got a second.
Okay.
That was a 3-hour delay.
Roll call vote, please.
Jerry Van Dam, Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Harris,
Yes.
Justin Lane,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Shelley Solzberg.
Yes.
And Carrie, thank you.
very much.
Good report, thank you. Item 10, General Manager's Report on Water Supply Project and Programs. Matt?
Good evening. Mr. Chisholm couldn't make it this evening, so I'm going to fill in for him tonight. Before we get into the General Manager's Report, we do have item 10A, which is Department of Water Resources State Water Project Delivery Capability Report for 2019. And I'm going to invite Water Resource Manager Tom Barnes up to give a presentation of that capability report prepared by the Department of Water Resources.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, directors. Just want to give you an update on one of the latest documents coming out of the state. There's no action required. It's just an update, and just keep you aware of what documents the staff is reviewing. And if you have any comments or any questions along the way, just feel free to stop me. So this is the item 10A, as Matt mentioned, the capability report. My theme for this presentation is capability is the new reliability. And that's, you'll see why that's called that in a little bit. We've seen a lot of changes in this report over the years, but this is a report that's put together every 2 years by 3 state agencies, State of California, so Governor Newsom's office, and Natural Resources Agency, and the Department of Water Resources, who we deal directly with daily on water resource issues. The DCR, we call it the Delivery Capability Report, meets requirements of Monterey Plus settlement, which was a lot of secret meetings and a lot of crazy lawsuits and things went on back in the early days, and the Monterey Agreement was passed, and then there was an amendment to that, and that's the Monterey Plus settlement agreement. Provide information for operation of state water project systems, estimating under a range of hydraulic conditions. The report is supposed to also give us long-term capability of state water project systems and let us know, what beneficial use under different hydrological conditions, and includes historic extended dry year periods and talks about wet year periods. And really what the idea is that the total amount of water that we as a state water contractor can expect to be delivering. Not only what we already delivered, but also what we will be able to deliver in the future. So that is the goal of the report. The report formerly known as Delivery Reliability Report before 2015. After we had an extraordinarily dry 2 years, 2013 and 2014, We even had a 5% allocation, which technically we started out at a 5% allocation. 2014, we went to a 0 allocation, first time in history. And then we got kicked back up to 5% by September. But what happened is the state water contractors all got together and we talked at Cass Lake Water Agency, and we came up with some language to try to address the 5% without really addressing the 5% in our urban water management plan. So what we did is we came up with some language, and that's up there on the screen. But the dry hydraulic conditions that led to the low 2014 state water project water supply allocation were extremely unusual and were not included in the state water project delivery estimates presented in the 2015 report. Basically this, in a sense, really gave DWR an out as to why we went all the way down to 0% allocation. It was related to their operations management. So the balance, we have a balance constantly in the state of California. We're dealing with, and the report talks about, we need a good and reliable estimate of how much water each water user, state water contractor, can get will in a given year, but not only one normal year, but also critical dry years, and anything in between a wet year and a dry year. So it gives contractors a better sense of what is needed to implement, or if they do need to implement conservation measures, plan new facilities, and new sources of water and life. It also reminds us, though, on the other end of the scale there, the Delta is a fragile ecosystem. So it reminds us that we need to balance between our delivering water and the Delta. And for the numerous in-basin beneficial uses and protection of endangered fish and but also stacked on top of all the Delta concerns is this climate change, which you've all heard of. And it was specified quite clearly in this report that needs to be addressed. So don't forget about that. Increasing variability, floods and droughts, and projecting high sea levels and things like that sort that obviously impact the Delta. Salinity in the Delta, which is a big issue for fish. Frequent groundwater degradation in that area. Subsidence and other things. The draft report coming out is it takes some operational assumptions. Most of these assumptions are the same for this new report. The last report was in 2017. Not much has changed there, but some notable changes are related to the operational assumptions. The first main thing is that they upgraded their modeling, so they upgraded the new CalSim model so that they can get more accurate results of operational modeling of systems. This map just shows different types of water movement, whether or not we're pumping or not. And so the baseline model was changed. The modeling represents what's called the Old and Middle River requirements. Old and Middle River flows are basically an indicator of how much water we are pulling from the Delta, and so that became inputted into this model this year. And also an amendment to what's called the Coordinated Operational Agreement, which is between federal agencies and state agencies who share these facilities, and how we need to get along and coordinate better. So that's what that agreement is about. So that includes those operational changes. Some of the most relevant findings in the 2019 are, the average annual table A water estimate for the 2019 report is about 118,000 acre-feet a year less than it was 2 years ago. So as the Delta exports are declining, obviously our water supply is declining. So we're seeing a decrease of about 180,000 acre-feet in water. Likelihood too of getting Article 21, as we did this last year in 2019. The likelihood, though, of getting Article 21 of 20,000 acre-feet or less have decreased about 16%. What's interesting, they did show a larger quantity possible in Article 21 on higher amounts. And that tends to point towards the fact that we are seeing a variability. In other words, we're getting very little water or we're getting way too much water. And so either way, it's a concern for us because we don't want too much water to grow. More detailed sections of the 2019 Delivery Capability Report. Section 1 talks about accessibility, or excuse me, why we even put together the report. Population growth, they're concerned about that. They're anticipating that you'll see 43 million people here in the next 10 years. We have about 39.6 or something now, so, that's a pretty good increase. And they're also anticipating 51 million, expecting to continue to grow. Seeing a lot of land use changes, we see that locally here with these town and country plans and things like that. Things are changing, water is needed in different areas, so that's gonna change things. Water supply is varying greatly year to year. This map here shows, just precipitation differences. You got down south, you get, maybe 2 inches of precipitation a year. Compared to up north, you get over 100, so big differences. Also, too, the report addresses the fact that there is legislation out there which has to ensure reliability of water. The one that affects us the most probably is the Urban Water Management Plan. AVEK, along with all the other urban water management agencies, puts together a plan every 5 years. We do estimate water supply and demand for 20-year outlook. And state water contractor delivery capability the estimates that they make in this report will be used in our 2020 report, the next urban water management report we put out. Also, Water Conservation Act, they want 20% decrease by 2020 this year. Section 2 talks about regulatory restrictions some more. I touched on that a little bit. Biological opinions, that affect state water project and Central Valley project operations. You have several fish, obviously, that are endangered, and salinity and degraded water quality is a big issue in the Delta. Delta inflows and Delta outflows, water quality objectives, all of these things are to be addressed, or are addressed in the report, and affecting our ability to get water. The X2 objective, which you may have heard about this from Dwayne or Matt in the past, but the X2 is an objective that is directly related to salinity in the Delta. X2 is defined as the distance in kilometers from the Golden Gate Bridge. So if you took a distance, here's Golden Gate Bridge on our little map. This is a map USD has put together showing the salinity or the intrusion of salt seawater into the Delta. Golden Gate Bridge here, if you took and you measured a distance, and you found that distance where from the Golden Gate Bridge you had 2 parts per 1,000 of EC or salinity, then you would mark that spot, and that would be that would indicate where you are relative to the Delta. And what they do is they say they pick a spot and they say, okay, Collins, these are actual places. Collinsville, you can't be past Collinsville with seawater intrusion. Or they'll say Port Chicago over here. You can't be past Port Chicago. So they'll name actual places and they'll say the X2 is at Port Chicago. That means you can't, it's here and that's as far as you can go. If we see it, if they start to see salinity encroach, then that becomes an indicator that you need to allow more fresh water to travel through the Delta, to stay in the Delta and move out towards the ocean. And basically what that means is less flows downward, less flows for us, less exports out of the Delta. Hopefully that was clear as mud. Okay, so some more regulatory restrictions around exports and imports. And we're always looking at that combination of what's coming in, what's going out, and that chart there on the right there basically indicates what we're under as far as Bay Delta standards, and those are restrictions that have been set up over many, many, many decades. Also, too, the Coordinated Operation Agreement, which I mentioned, which it has been amended this last 2 years ago, was amended between state water project contractors and state water and federal contractors. But basically, the idea is to better reflect the current regulatory environment and operations of the projects. That's what the report is attempting to do. It wants to update that. Type of water year. We look at this a lot. We talk, Dwayne talks in his general manager report about wet year, dry year, abnormal, or below normal. So Sacramento Valley Index is what is giving that to us, and that's basically, they call it the 43-30. They take different rivers and they take percentages and they give you a Sacramento Valley Index. That gives you that bottom chart there. Lowest Sacramento Valley is that big red arrow there. More recently, we got down in 1977, 1983. Not very long after that, we got one of the highest, in fact, the highest Sacramento Valley Index. So these are the variabilities we're talking about. That's why we go from reliability to capability, because it's very difficult to rely on a system that does that much movement. Section 3 of the report talks about ongoing environmental policies, planning. The Delta Plan, which has been established for quite a while under Governor Brown, has co-equal goals, and that will continue through Newsom. And he wants to, basically make a major change on that is the water fix. The water fix is no longer around. It was approved in 2017, but it's gone. That's the twin tunnel project. Water fix is now being replaced by the single tunnel project, which some people are still upset about, but they do like the fact that the idea has been reduced to smaller.
What's the difference?
Smaller capacity flow, basically.
So it's
So
not-
more in the delta.
So it's not gonna fix anything?
It's gonna fix the delta. Yeah, so they took away the water fix part of it.
So I was just wondering.
Yeah, the intent, it's pretty clear. The intent is more water in the delta. More water for environmental reasons in the delta. That's really what it's about. Incidental take permits, VWR has an incidental take permit with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife that basically allows them to take a certain amount of long-fin smelt. That expired, and so they're continuing to try to work on a long-term operational plan for that. You may have heard of voluntary agreements, that's basically part of the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan, which is an old plan, it's been around a long time. It's basically to expand the commitments of the contractors, for water flow and for storage of these. And Governor Newsom says, "I am committing to achieving a doubling of California's salmon population by 2050. Newsom wrote that these agreements will be foundational to meeting that goal. So that's what he wants to do. How they do that is they're going to add 900,000 acre feet to the delta. That's like we were mentioning. They're going to restore over 60,000 acres of new habitat. They're going to generate $5 billion to put towards environmental. So these are the plans. Those are the specifics of his plan through these voluntary agreements.
People that fish, love to go salmon fishing, really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that's a great statement.
Only endangered species in the world you can buy in the store.
Yeah, interesting. Before the capability report goes on to estimate what you're going to have, they want to talk a lot about historical deliveries. So they go back and they talk about historical deliveries, minimum, maximums, average total each contractor is taking. They talk about the 4 different water types that hopefully we're familiar with, but we'll do a little review. This is talking about table A, first of all. That's our base table supply. Our table A is the base water supply. It's a percentage we get every year. We currently have 15%, and that's through our contract. We have carryover, which has helped us out over many, many years, and that's a state water project that's allocated each year but is not used, and so it's rolled over to the next year. And then we have Article 21, which is short-term additional supply, and that comes when we have high hydrology, heavy rainfall. We have spill basically with San Luis Reservoir, and so these short-term additions of water, those are things that have to happen under very specific conditions. But also have turnback pool, which is a buy-sell. We generally sell to the turnback pool traditionally because we have always had an abundance of water, extra takeaway. Locally, AVEK has taken advantage of state water project water types and the long-term planning for conjunctive use of surface water for recharge during wet years, leading to additional groundwater availability in dry years. So we take advantage of all of these waters, plus many more, transfers, exchanges, dry year water programs, which are not mentioned in the report. So we take advantage of all of these waters so we can bring them in and use them in a conjunctive project, recharge and recovery. The annual state water project table A water delivery amounts for the state water contractors is here. They show a minimum. You see that red line there. That's our minimum we hit in 2014 during that 0% to 5% year, and then we maxed out at about 3.1 million there in 2017. So about average about 1.87 million acre feet. You can see where our cap is at. That's that red line on the top, the dotted red line. That's where our max is at. So our 10-year historical deliveries are less than the maximum, the 4.17 million acre feet a year. Locally, AVEK's maximum state water project table A allocation is about almost 145,000 acre feet. Currently, I mentioned we're at 15%, so it's about 21,700 acre feet this year. We currently have about 27,000 in carryover, so that gives us a good amount coming in 2022. Carryover water, that's the next chunk of water, and that is allocated to state water contractors. Again, if it's not used, you don't use it in 1 year, table A, you get a carryover the next year. Instead of being delivered to the contractor, it is placed into storage in the system or in the San Luis Reservoir. Security of that is always kind of based on space. You can't take somebody else's space. Article 21, again, helps state water contractors when allocations are less than 100%. This is additional water that we can get. Turnback pool, I mentioned, is another option. Total historical state water project deliveries through these 10 years broken out by delivery amount. Here's another one. Again, showing the great variability. You can see there's, it's again, difficult to call it reliability when you don't have that kind of steady flow of water. So you can see there's huge differences. You have, 477,000 acre feet compared to 3.4 million acre feet in differences. So there's big differences in water every year. Locally, AVEK, total historical state water project deliveries. I made this chart here just to kind of show you the breakdown of what we're like. Of course, it mimics the last chart because we have the highs and the lows. 2014 we had a low, especially the low year. We only, delivered about 14,000 acre feet compared to 136,000 with all our transfers and everything else in 2017. The big difference. We're talking about 40 in the 40s, somewhere 45% is what they thought it was going to be. So they're in the 59%, so not bad. But still way below what we used to have. When I first started AVEK 15 years ago, it was 82%, I think, and then it went to 78%, and then it dropped to 62% for several years, and then it went to 59%. So multiple wet years they look at in the report, and over 6 year time frame, that's dropped a little bit too. So if you have multiple wet years, you're dropping your capability is dropping from 83 to 80%. Your single wet year is dropping from 99 to about 97%. So that's just what that chart on right here is showing. They also have to, in the report, have to estimate dry year delivery projections. Long term it's the same, but you notice multi-dry year dropped from 29 to 26%. And then single dry year is interesting because even though they included the 2014 5% allocation, the single dry year is still at 7% for the state. We, AVEK, we have used 5% because that's really what we saw. Rather than the department is not willing to go that low, they will say 7%. So 7% is their new number for single dry year estimations. And again, this will be used in our urban water management planning, so we'll have that included. And that's all I have on the draft state water project capability report. Any questions? Love to answer. A lot of stuff I know, and there's a lot of different items that we could talk about for hours on end, and maybe in the future we can have some more presentations on things like X2, water quality.
Well, you said something very interesting. You look at the formula, you're talking about 2050, population was up, what,
43 million, yeah.
Yeah, so
It's about a 9% increase.
okay, so you said that, and then they're dropping the twins to a single tunnel, cut back the water, Southern California.
That's the plan, right?
Okay, I'm that's, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what the plan is. And then, but they're gonna double the population of salmon. So I was wondering, where they're cutting back the water to the south, how those people gonna get water? I mean, because it's still, there's only 365 days a year, it only rains, whatever we get, rain, whatever it is, and there's only so much going through that channel. It's gonna be very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, something doesn't click. I mean, something's not making sense, getting that water down there.
If you recall, 2 weeks ago, I presented the resiliency portfolio from the government, and he mentioned a lot about local storage, local groundwater storage. And I think what he's doing is he's saying, in a sense, you're pretty much on your own, in the sense of you need to take advantage of when the deluge of water comes, you need to take advantage of that and you can store it locally, because getting it from Northern California is going to be tricky.
Right.
Projections of
salinity in the delta as sea levels rise? Do they give any projections of how much sea level will rise and how many years we will start experiencing greater problems in the delta?
Yeah, there definitely is a connection. I don't know if it compares exactly what the numbers are. I do know though that because of that assumption of seawater level rise, the X2 I mentioned is going to be even more and more critical because they will begin to push that saltwater intrusion location back further and further towards the coast. And so yeah, that's what I would expect to see. I haven't actually seen any numbers or percentages related, but definitely it's going to be an issue. And this next year actually we'll probably see some numbers coming out.
I have a question as well. Do you have the difference in the capacity, like the 2 tunnel versus the one tunnel?
Let's see.
One up is coming south.
Yeah. I remember, it's been a while since water fixes been around actually. They shelved it for a lot of years and then they brought it back.
Yeah, I think it went from 9,500 cubic feet per second to 6,000 cubic feet per second. So that's the difference between 2 tunnels and 1 tunnel.
Yeah.
So about 9,500 CFS to 6,000.
Yeah.
So 6,000 CFS is the current design capacity of the single tunnel.
Okay, any other questions?
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, and we'll get into our little GM report. So we'll talk a little bit about the weather throughout the state. This is our typical map that shows the Feather River region. Pretty dry still. Snow level is projected to drop from 8,000 to 6,500 feet over the weekend, but still there's no precipitation to generate snow. So this is our 8-station index. It doesn't look too good for the month of February so far. You can see the only good month we had for the current water year was in December. It was just above our average, which is the blue bar or the blue line. You can see January was about 50% of average and nothing to date in February. So we're running out of time. Got the rest of February. We got March and then maybe a little bit in April. So overall things look pretty dry in the short term, next 2 to 3 weeks. The good news is that throughout the State Water Project, the reservoir levels are at or above average capacity. So you can see the each of the State Water Project reservoirs there. The blue portion of the bar shows the current level. The red line is the average. So even Lake Orville and San Luis Reservoir are pretty close to the average for this time of year. So that's the good news. And Tom mentioned, current allocation is at 15% for 2020, and we do have about 27,000 acre feet in San Luis for carryover to use in 2020. So even if we didn't get an increase in our allocation, we do have sufficient water supply to meet our demands without having to pull anything from the water banks. We're going to switch gears a little bit. This is something new that Mr. Chisholm wanted to incorporate into the monthly report to the board. Is kind of a report of the prior month's activities. So this report covers the period of January 1st through January 31st of this year. And we're tying a lot of accomplishments that we're going to highlight with our strategic goals. So 1 through 6 there is each of our current strategic goals for the agency. First one being groundwater, basin stewardship. As you know, we're working on the High Desert Water Bank. We're currently in negotiations with the recommended firm. We hope to bring that back to the committee and board later this month for approval and by the full board to get our engineering firm and hydrogeology firm on board for the High Desert Water Bank. So that's a big step. We just heard about the Westside Water Bank recharge piping that Mr. Livesay presented on. Following goal 2, which is water reliability. As you know, we have approved the amended and restated MOU with LA County Waterworks. We also approved the term sheet with Palmdale Water District for Coral Valley development. And we submitted our final feasibility study to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation in January. And this is for roughly $26 million in grant funding through the Bureau for the completion of the SNIP Phase 2 pipeline project. So we've completed all of the paperwork, and even this week we got a letter from the California governor in support of the project. That was also relayed to the Bureau of Reclamation, as well as we're working on a letter of support from Congressman McCarthy's office for this project. Also, this would be a good opportunity to highlight some of the great work that our staff does. You can see a picture on the right there. This is our backwash piping. So that manifold and piping was done by our in-house crew, welding staff and operations staff. They did a great job, saved money for the agency, and completely rebuilt that in-house. So that's a picture of the existing backwash pumps that feed into that header pipe, which is used to pump water for the backwash process here at the Quartz Hill Water Treatment Plant. And then we also just approved the replacement of some clarifier valves at the Eastside Water Treatment Plant, as well as the turnout contract. And we did receive delivery of the tow vehicle for our emergency generators. As you know, this current budget approved 4 new emergency generators. We've received delivery of 3 of those. We should get the other one here next week or 2. So we'll have all 6 generators available to us, including the tow vehicle. Last month, we also had a real-life exercise because the Acton pump station lost power. It was over the weekend. Our crew did a great job, mobilized 2 generators to that site. Just as everything was getting set up, power came back on. But it was a good exercise for the staff to utilize the equipment and make sure everything works. Water reliability, goal 2 continued. As you know, we're working on an emergency response plan that was awarded by the board. We've initiated that work with the selected consultant, and things seem to be going pretty good on that. Mr. Barnes presented on the 2020 resilience portfolio at the last meeting, and then just completed his report on the capability report. Water quality, THM levels remain below our goal of 64 parts per billion. The red line there that you see on the graph is the MCL. The green line is the internal goal set by the agency, and then you can see the various colors below that of the various locations where we sample THM levels, all of which are below the internal goal of 64 parts per million. I think we're scheduled to collect another round of samples either this week or next week. We did conduct a lab audit from the ELAP system, or accreditation program. That went very well. There was just a few minor recommendations from the inspection, and all of those have already been corrected, so we're in good shape in our lab. And we're continuing to report or monitor the reporting requirements for PFOA and PFOS, which has to do with some new emerging regulations regarding Teflon and Scotch guards that are found in the water supply. Goal 4 is our financial integrity. As you know, we adopted our 2020 wholesale water rate, our public hearing. We've met with and kind of a good place to present our draft purchasing policy. This was done through the Finance Committee. Goal is to get that out to the full board here in the next couple weeks or couple days, and then this will be an action item at our next board meeting. So this is a big step on having the actual purchasing policy for the agency. A lot of hard work by the committee on that. Human resource stewardship. As you know, we recently approved a new organizational chart, which created a couple of new positions, and happy to report that we've promoted 2 excellent internal individuals to these 2 new positions. Doug Holmes was offered the new position of Assistant Operations Manager for Water Banking and Maintenance, and Steve Omchiochi was promoted to the new maintenance supervisor. So both great individuals, happy to see that we can always promote from within. Also, we distributed an RFP to conduct a comprehensive salary survey for the agency. Communications, in addition to the purchasing policy that we're going to circulate, we're going to circulate a communications plan that the Public Information Committee has reviewed, and we're at a good place to distribute that to the full board for possible action at the next meeting. We're also going to bring back at the next meeting potentially an amendment with Townsend Public Affairs, as well as our staff writer for the agency. We had a tour from Edwards Air Force Base staff, had about 20 individuals from the base, both military and civilian folks. They took a tour of the Torts Hill Water Treatment Plant. That was great. They really were impressed with the operation and learned a lot from that process. Following up on communications, Public Information Committee is also working on potentially sponsoring a endowment fund and working on funding the Kids Egg Day for the Farm Bureau. I mentioned the Townsend Public Affairs technical writer amendments. That's coming up. And then a couple events. We have the Water Master Board meeting here at this office on February 26th at 10 a.m. We have the Urban Water Institute Spring Conference on the 19th through 21st. I believe we have a director or two attending that. We have the Board of Trade Outlook Conference on 28th at 7 a.m. Mr. Chisholm should be back in the office tomorrow or Thursday. He's feeling better, and I will be out of the office tomorrow at the City Water Contractor meeting. And that's all I have to report.
Any questions from Matt? Thank you very much, Matt. Item 11, Director's Report. Does anybody have a report? Shelley?
No, thank you.
Okay. Item 12, Attorney's Report. Nick?
I have nothing to report other than to confirm whether the consent calendar was acted upon earlier.
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you.
A good question. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Item 13, are there any requests for future agenda items? All right. Item 14, I don't believe we have any reason to go into closed session tonight, do we?
Correct. No reason to go into closed session.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Mary Van Dam, Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Harris.
Yes.
Justin Lane.
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Shelley Source.
Yes.
Carrie, we're now adjourned. Thank you very much.